you ever said to yourself, I feel totally addicted to food? What if I told you that what feels like an addiction may not be an addiction at all? And that's really good news, because you can absolutely work on feeling less addicted to food. I'm Dr. Lara Zibarras, psychologist and binge eating recovery coach. And in this video, I'm going to unpack why food addiction isn't necessarily an addiction in the clinical sense, and I'm going to explain what's actually driving that feeling or that behaviour that makes you feel addicted to food. First up, let's talk about why the term food addiction isn't accurate in a clinical sense. The difference between something like drugs or alcohol versus food is that with food you need it. You need to eat food on a day-to-day basis in order to survive. But with drugs and alcohol, you don't need those in order to survive. So in the first instance, there's something very different about our relationship with food and our relationship with drugs and alcohol. One of the reasons you may have seen on social media or read a blog post about this idea that food is addictive is that there is research to suggest that when we eat food, certainly high palatable foods like high sugar or high fat foods, that there are certain areas of the brain that light up. So that's our dopamine reward system area. In a similar way to when you take drugs or you drink alcohol, the same areas light up. So there was a lot of talk on social media and blog posts saying, well, if the same parts of the brain light up, then it must indicate that food can be addictive. But the thing is that those same areas actually light up when we do lots of things. So if I was to stroke my cat, or if you were to listen to some music, or speak to someone that you're in love with, or go on a date, or have sex, those same pathways in your brain light up. So just because eating food, high palatable food, and drugs, they both light up the same pathways doesn't mean it's addictive, because we don't suddenly say that stroking kittens and stroking puppies is addictive. The other thing that I find very problematic about the terminology is that when we start saying to ourselves, or someone says to you that you must be addicted to food, it creates a kind of learned helplessness cycle where if you're saying I'm addicted, it's almost like there's nothing that you can do about it. You might be better off actually saying I'm stuck in a cycle, because by calling it a cycle, it means that you can actually step out of that cycle if you know what you can do to help that feeling of addiction. That feeling of addiction does feel very valid and it feels very real. I have definitely been there in the past where I literally felt like I was addicted to sugar. That was my thing back then. So it is a valid feeling. However, if we keep saying to ourselves, I'm addicted, we're kind of implying that there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. Before I go any further, I just want to tell you about my food noise quiz. So this could be really good for you to complete if you're thinking, oh, I don't know what is going on with me and my relationship with food, because this will help you uncover some of the more hidden reasons why you might feel out of control around food or have that addicted feeling. So if you go into the description below, you'll see a link to complete the quiz, and it will give you more of an insight into what's going on with your relationship with food. Okay, so going back to that feeling. So what feels like an addiction, and that, like I say, is very valid, and I know what that feels like. Often it's not actually that you're addicted to food, it's more to do with your relationship with food. And in most cases, when I work with people, when they are saying they feel addicted, actually what's going on is that they aren't eating enough. They are restricting food. So when we restrict food, we do that because we feel like we're overeating or binging. So we think, oh, okay, I'm not going to eat that food. Now, often the things that we give up are things like high sugar or high fat foods, or maybe even carbs. And then what happens is that we start to focus on those foods. We start to think about them more. It's like if I said to you, don't think about a pink elephant, the thing that you start thinking about obviously is a pink elephant because I've told you not to. It's exactly the same with food. So this is something called the forbidden fruit effect, where if you tell yourself you're not allowed this list of food, suddenly those are the foods that you really want. So you start thinking about them more and more and more, and that becomes more urgent and more intense. And then what happens is if you go ahead and eat any of those foods, that urgency and intensity comes out in the way that you are with the food. So you have one of those forbidden foods, and then when you eat it, you go like slightly wild and out of control with it. That reinforces this feeling that I'm addicted. I can't stop thinking about this food. I'm thinking about it constantly. There's that food noise. And then when I eat it, I'm totally out of control, and all I can do is just stuff more of that food into my face. You see, it's this scarcity that creates the urgency, because the more the food is scarce, the more that we increase this scarcity mindset. It means that when you finally get hold of the food, it is so urgent because it has not been allowed. So that rebound effect feels very, very addictive. All I could do was think about this food. I finally got my hands on this food. So it's almost like that rebound effect, like pulling back an elastic band and letting go. You go so far in the other direction, you think, well, I must be addicted to this food. One of the mindsets that actually reinforces this and makes it feel worse is that all or nothing thinking mindset, where you have told yourself, you know, you're not allowed all of these foods, but then maybe you have one cookie or something, and then suddenly you're out of control. So you've gone from all to nothing very, very quickly. And that can really exacerbate, again, that feeling of addiction around food. One of the main drivers of this feeling of addiction is actually restriction. In most cases, when I'm working with clients and I look at what they're eating across the week or a day, I find that they are often undereating or attempting to undereat. And in most instances where they start eating regularly and consistently, the urge or that kind of addictive feeling starts to fade. Another thing to look at, and again, this is something that I see with people who say that they feel addicted to food, is looking at their habits around food. So what kind of associations have they created around their relationship with food? So there might be certain times of day where they eat certain foods, or there are environmental cues that trigger that kind of addictive feeling. And all of that, the habits, they reinforce this reward loop. So let's say you are really stressed during the day and you come home from work and you have the habit that when you sit in front of the TV, you always have some crisps, or you always have a bowl of ice cream. So you've created that habit of, I'm stressed, and the way to deal with that stress is to zone out in front of the TV with some food. So you've created this habit loop. So I always recommend using pattern interrupters or thinking of a different way to regulate, or doing something slightly different to make that habit less strong. If you feel addicted to food, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are addicted to food. It probably just means that there is something going on with your relationship with food, whether it's more to do with mindset or restriction or the forbidden fruit effect, but there will probably be something underlying that feeling of addiction towards food. So I highly recommend completing the food noise quiz. It is linked in the description below, and that will just give you a better insight into what's going on with your relationship with food. And sometimes having that insight is the first step to feeling much more in charge and confident around food. I highly recommend watching this video next. This is all about why you can't stop eating or binge eating at night. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.